Hello everyone, my name is Meliz and welcome to my first video about Ashes of Creation on this channel. Whether you're already familiar with Ashes of Creation or just simply curious, in this video I would like to let you know about my experience with the game so far. The developers are currently running a testing phase where players who have access can test and play the game, report bugs and provide feedback on the state of the game so far. Right now we are in phase 1 of this alpha, and the second phase of the alpha is expected to start on December 20th, 2024. During the past few weeks I have been able to dive in and test Ashes of Creation during phase 1 of the alpha. Since this testing phase is coming to an end, I figured this would be the perfect time to share my thoughts in a review. Quick disclaimer here, this is a true alpha, meaning that any footage you see here will probably change before release. And also the game world is much smaller than it will be in the final version, so keep that in mind. With that said, let's jump in. The first thing I wanted to talk about here is how the game generally feels to play. Despite Ashes of Creation being in a very early alpha stage, the game already feels like it has a solid foundation for its concept. From the moment you step into the world, it's clear this isn't a typical MMORPG that guides you every step of the way. The gameplay does not consist of big glowing arrows guiding you to the next quest hub. Instead, the game is truly a sandbox, meaning you get to make your own decisions on where to go and what to do at any time. The game offers a constant sense of risk and adventure as you travel. The world is full of dangerous mobs and potentially dangerous players, which makes every journey a calculated risk. Dying is not simply punished by placing you back in a town. You get XP debt as you die, meaning it takes longer to reach the next level. You also risk losing a portion of your gathered materials and loot. Currently, the main way of leveling up is to kill mobs for XP, and it takes significantly longer to level than you might be used to from other MMOs. However, the slower pace makes the process feel more rewarding. Each level feels like a meaningful achievement. The moment you hit a new level, the difference in gameplay is immediately noticeable. You gain more health, deal increased damage, and unlock new abilities to customize your character further. The progression feels impactful and thus extremely satisfying when you hear that little ding. I personally enjoy games that offer a slower experience, where at the same time you decide your own journey, but naturally that is up to personal taste. As to leveling, it seems the fastest way to level is by joining a party and leveling as a group. Working together is not just beneficial in Ashes of Creation, it is almost essential. At the beginning of the alpha, when the servers were most populated with people trying to level their character, it was easy to find others willing to group up and work together, putting that emphasis on the social aspect of the game. However, as the alpha progressed and fewer players were active on my server, I noticed the challenges of solo play. With fewer players available for grouping, leveling became much harder, particularly when trying out alternative classes. Now, of course, we are leading up to phase 2 of the alpha, so not as many people are playing at the moment, and I don't expect this to be as much of a problem in the future when more players will populate the servers once again. I do hope in the future there are plans for more variety in leveling systems. At the moment, leveling through questing, for example, is simply not worth it. The quests give relatively little experience and many of them are broken, meaning you cannot complete them and thus get no experience. One thing I did notice was that the events that pop up in the world offer a fair amount of experience, and it is actually worth traveling to them and participating. Gathering and crafting also gives some general experience, but once you reach higher levels, you don't exactly make a lot of progress this way. Overall, I think the game could benefit from diversifying the leveling options and some rebalancing when it comes to the current XP rewards for quests and commissions. When you play Ashes of Creation with others and immerse yourself in the social aspects of the game, you begin to truly appreciate the systems designed to support this community-driven experience. The world of Vera revolves around a unique feature called nodes, towns and their surrounding territories that players can help grow and develop. Players can become citizens of a node and contribute to its progression. As players engage in activities within a node's territory, the node itself can level up, unlocking new opportunities. Citizens are allowed to elect another player as a mayor. mayors make critical decisions about the node. The mayor determines which buildings to construct, from crafting stations to processing facilities, each offering features to benefit all citizens. Taxes, set by the mayor, generate income to maintain and upgrade these structures, while players can donate materials to aid in construction. Personally, I found this system gave me a strong sense of purpose and a way to contribute meaningfully to the community. Beyond nodes, Ashes of Creation offers multiple mechanics to keep players engaged. Guilds, guild wars, node wars, caravans, events, and dungeons all stimulate cooperation and competition. PvP does exist in the game, but this is somewhat discouraged by a system called corruption. I personally don't do much PvP, so someone else can probably explain this far better than I could, but essentially if you kill a player, you build up corruption, which penalizes you for killing others. This is mostly in place to prevent the indiscriminate PvP and griefing. You really have to make strategic decisions about when you want to engage in PvP. Perhaps you are competing for resources, or you are trying to loot another player's caravan, expecting to make a profit. All these systems allow for players to form politics on their server, and they make the world of Vera engaging in a way I haven't seen in an MMO in quite some time. I felt invested despite the bugs and the minimal amount of content we currently have available to us. For me, it also helped that I found an amazing guild to play with to give me that added sense of community and purpose. I tried to help out with constructing the buildings in the Mirrorlith node, where the guild leader was the elected mayor on our server. I also tried to help out guild members with materials for gear, and they were helping me in turn as well. Overall, Ashes of Creation shows great promise in bringing the massively multiplayer back to MMORPGs. The social systems already in place lay a strong foundation for collaborative and competitive gameplay, and these features are only expected to grow and evolve in the next phase of the alpha. I'm excited to see how Intrepid Studios builds upon this groundwork to create an even richer experience. Let's talk about the combat next. In my personal opinion, this is currently one of the strongest aspects of the game. Even during this point in the alpha, the combat system already feels smooth, intuitive, and most importantly, fun. I was very relieved about this, because if the combat of a game feels bad right off the bat, that must be difficult to fix. I spent the majority of my time playing as a fighter, and I managed to reach level 20. The progression as you level and choose your abilities feels natural and intuitive. What makes this system even more engaging is the level of customization available. You choose a class at the start of your journey, but the game does not put you into this rigid box of a playstyle. For example, a mage is not limited to using a wand or a book, but you can instead choose to wield a magical sword and equip heavy armor, if that's more your cup of tea. Gear and weapons are not class locked, allowing for flexibility in how you build your character. Another thing that stands out is the dual combat system. Players get to choose between traditional tap targeting system or a more dynamic action combat mode, which caters to different preferences. The movement in the game feels smooth and intuitive with your typical WASD setup for navigation. It's important the movement feels good, since travel and exploration play a big part in this game. That said, I do think the game could benefit from some improvements when it comes to riding mounts and steering caravans. Riding a mount can be frustrating sometimes, since it's easy to get stuck behind small ledges if you don't time your jumps perfectly. And honestly, half the time it looks like the mount should be perfectly capable to just step over it. As for caravans, maneuvering them across rough terrain often feels inconsistent, especially when it comes to obstacles. During some moments, I felt confident I should be able to traverse a certain path, only to find myself stuck, whereas the other people in the caravan procession seem to have little to no problem. Sometimes it just seems to be a case of trial and error, rather than carefully choosing where you take your caravan. Many fantasy MMORPGs incorporate some form of gathering and crafting system, and Ashes of Creation is no different. However, how Ashes is different is that crafting your own gear can actually give you very powerful items compared to most drops from mobs. If you craft high quality pieces made with high quality materials, you can definitely get an edge over other players. This makes gathering and crafting actually a very important part of the game. They did recently nerf this a little bit, but it's still worth it to try out some crafting. There are a variety of gathering, processing and crafting skills to choose from, however, you cannot master them all. For me, this took some getting used to, as I come from sandbox games that allow you to literally train every skill to the max. For example, in Ashes at level 10, you can get a certificate to upgrade a skill to the next stage, Apprentice, but you can only do this for 5 skills out of 22. At level 20, or Journeyman, you can get a certificate for 4 skills, at Master 3 skills, and Grandmaster 2 skills. I understand why Intrepid made this decision, as it forces you to trade and work together with other players to get all the stuff you might desire. This once again puts emphasis on the social aspect of the game. I'm going to be honest, some of the Artisan content in the game feels a bit unbalanced and unfinished at the moment, which I suppose is only to be expected for an alpha, but just to name an example, it currently seems impossible to get any animal carcass that is heroic quality or higher, which also means it is impossible to get leather and thus crafted leather equipment for that quality. This bug affects other crafting skills as well. It is expected that Artisan will be changed a little bit after the 20th of December when Phase 2 releases, so anything I say about Artisan now will probably change a lot after that. Let's talk about the graphics. I am personally a sucker for pretty games, however, if the core gameplay is enjoyable, less than ideal graphics are not a deal breaker for me. I mean, I played RuneScape for many years, and I think we can all agree those graphics are not the most modern or realistic by any means. I've heard other people complaining about the graphics in Ashes of Creation, that it looks like a game from 2007. I honestly have to disagree with this. I played the game with high graphic settings most of the time, and I found the game to be simply beautiful. From the night sky down to the ripples in the air from the forge, I was very pleased with the graphics. I do think the player characters could do with some work. It seemed any changes I made in the character creation to the face and body did not go through into the game, so everybody basically looks the same with the few character presets we can currently pick from. Although I think this is just because it's an alpha at the moment. Performance-wise, like I said, I played the game with high graphic settings most of the time, and I found it to be running fairly smoothly. I will put my computer specifications on the screen for you to compare if you're curious to see if you can run the game on your machine. On a different note, other people have made the point the art style of the game is somewhat lacking in character, even leaning towards generic. I do have to agree with this a little bit. It is clear this game is built with Unreal Engine 5, and that's about the only distinguishable thing about it. I understand the team is going for the realistic look, but in the process, I'm missing a bit of personal touch or spark, or however you want to call it. I hope they can find a way in the future where if someone looks at footage or a screenshot of the game, they know, oh yeah, this is Ashes. Another note about the graphics is that there is a day and night cycle and also a season cycle. However, during this alpha, I was a bit disappointed to see we were stuck in the winter season for most of the past few weeks. I would have loved to try the game more during spring, summer and autumn, and I hope that during the testing of Alpha Phase 2, we get to experience the other seasons a bit more often. One more point I'd like to make is about the combat animations. I think they are beautiful and it's satisfying to see them in use. However, as someone who is sensitive to lots of visual input, all the combat effects together can get quite straining on the eyes and concentration when you are doing combat in a group. I wish there was a game option for reduced combat animations. Think of it as an accessibility feature. I think Final Fantasy XIV, for example, implemented this quite well. You see your own combat effects, those by enemies, and also any effects that are relevant to you, such as healing AoEs. I don't have to see the mage's prismatic beam or the whirlwind from the fighter next to me. Just any way to decrease some of the visual clutter I would greatly appreciate, and I hope Intrepid will consider implementing something like this soon. In the current stage of the game, there is not that much variety yet when it comes to the music, but from what I've heard so far, the music is actually pretty good, though not your typical music in MMOs. The calm melody smoothly transcends into this quick-paced music when you are close to a dangerous mob or you engage in combat. It's a different take from your typical drums and war horns for combat music. The background music has been subtle and pleasant to listen to for extended periods of gameplay. As for the sound effects of combat spells and things you interact with in the game, I don't have much to comment, so I suppose nothing about it either bothered me, nor is it particularly outstanding. I do like some of the little details you find in the world, like when you walk along a windmill, you hear the creaking from the wood. That's pretty cool. However, as for the voice acting, let's say during the first weekends, this was rough. They have since fixed most of the voice acting, but at the start of the alpha, they were using this AI voice acting as a placeholder, and it was a big flop. That's really the only way I can put it. I would rather not have had any voice acting at all, rather than the strange AI voice acting. Like I said, they have since fixed it, and I don't expect it to be an issue in the future, unless they decide to put more placeholder voice acting on new quests, which I sincerely hope they do not. As this is a true alpha, there are definitely many bugs in the game. This ranges from minor visual bugs all the way to pretty major game-breaking bugs that players have exploited and even broke the economy with at some point during the alpha. Of course, we are here to test and squash these bugs. There is an in-game option for easily reporting bugs as you encounter them. Rather than going over every single bug I have encountered, because honestly there have been a lot, I would like to focus on how the developers have handled these fixes and feedback during this phase of Alpha 2. Straight off the bat, I think I should mention the performance and server stability has immensely improved since the first weekend of testing. During the first weekend, the game frequently crashed, it was laggy, and I encountered a lot of errors. Now I can continuously play for multiple hours without any major issues, so on this topic the improvement really shows. It is still the case where frequently a bug will happen where a quick relog generally fixes the problem, such as problems with the inventory or looting. For me, relogging was not as much of an issue because I could relog quickly, but for some of the guild members this was a big deal, as every time they tried to relog, they encountered a series of errors and it could take up to 5 minutes for them to even be able to select a character again. Eventually, some of them figured out this was a problem caused by something like their VPN or Hamachi interfering with their connection, or they simply had to switch from IPv6 to IPv4. In my experience, the team has been quick to listen to players' feedback, make changes, and update the game to fix bugs high on the priority list. Sure, my mount might occasionally still be gliding instead of running, but at least the most severe bugs have been squashed at this point. I think this sets a precedent for how the team might respond to any issues in the future, and it has made me hopeful they are willing to listen to their player base and are quick to respond when problems do occur. Overall, I can say I have very much enjoyed playing and testing this game in its current state. It has been quite a while since I felt so immersed into a game, feeling myself wanting to get back into it even when the servers are down for the weekdays. My experience has generally been positive, the core systems are enjoyable, the graphics look nice but could do with a little personal touch, and the team has been quick to respond to issues, frequently releasing updates to address them. Testing the game does come with a steep price tag of $110 for entering Phase 2 of the alpha on the 20th of December. You will have to decide for yourself whether this is worth it if you do want to try out the game. I will post a link in the description to the Ashes of Creation website for your convenience. If you would like to add to the discussion or if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more of this sort of content in the future. I will see you in the next one.